All right, welcome in. This is the Individual Skills Hockey Podcast, a podcast that aims to bring quality education to youth hockey coaches, parents, and players with the mission of having a positive impact on the crazy youth hockey world. I'm your host, Miles Deeth, and today we are so lucky to be at the Base Sports Performance Center training. What is it called?
The Base Sports Performance in New Hope. Maybe we need to add training center there. I don't know.
But our guest today is Dave Brown, and he's the owner here at the Base, and he also runs Minnesota Lakers AAA, and he is the head boys hockey coach at Rogers High School. Thanks for being here.
Nailed it.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Good. I'm really excited to have Dave on just because I respect you in a lot of ways. I view you as sort of a self-made coach, just based on like your playing career. Is that fair to say?
100%.
And I kind of put myself into that category sometimes too when you compare my playing career to some others.
Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. So, why don't you just start and tell us a little bit how coaching started for you? Because like I said, I think it's a good story if you can keep it short. Yeah.
Yeah. Long story short, I graduated from Cal Lutheran out in Thousand Oaks. I moved home to work for a magazine called The Fourth Period out of Canada to cover the Minnesota Wild. The NHL lockout hit in the 2012-2013 season, and I was like, what am I going to do? I started coaching Band and B1 hockey at Chapman Park Youth Hockey Association. We started off 0-10, and I fell in love with it. So, I mean, looking back, I was probably the worst hockey coach in human history that first year. But I fell in love with it. The NHL lockout ended. I tried doing both for 2 seasons, and I felt like when I was going to like Wild Blackhawks playoff games, I was missing out on Champlain Park, White Bear Lake, Band and B1 scrimmages I wanted to be at. And, you know, once I met Coach O'Leary at Wayzata, I kind of, every year I became more and more of a full-time hockey coach.
So how many years has it been then total coaching?
This is my 10th year coaching hockey.
Hockey in general.
Yep. And, you know, you mentioned I don't have a big playing career. I quit at, 14, 15 years old for a multitude of reasons. I actually picked it back up in college. So I got like a weird Southern California ACHA club hockey experience, which I think is a unique aspect to my hockey background. But yeah, no, don't have an elite prospects page with 100 career NHL games.
And in my opinion, I think that's so interesting because everything you know about hockey, you've had to learn from a coach's perspective. It's fair to say.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think over the last 10 years, I'm a very inquisitive person and a very curious person. So I think I've tried to surround myself with a lot of former players to learn what that's like. And I think that aspect of studying it is important, even though I haven't gone through it.
Yeah. So give us a short summary on how you guys here or with Lakers or at Rogers, for that matter, kind of approach the player development process.
Yeah, I think, there's lots of different styles. You know, when you're the Rogers head coach, your common goal is to get to the X. I think when you're talking from a Lakers and a Base standpoint, we have a holistic approach. So you're working on the individual with achievable goals in that 1, 3, 5 year strategy. I always joke that like if making Connor McDavid was easy, there'd be more than one Connor McDavid. So I don't think you can sign up for one camp or one clinic or, one off season and think you're going to be Connor McDavid. I think the long-term athletic development model that USA Hockey preaches is really good. And I think having that 3 to 5 year mindset is important, that, you're not going to, Rome wasn't built in a day, but every day matters. So that's the best way I can describe, my personal approach and the Base and Lakers approach to development.
Yeah, and it goes to, I don't know, it's super cliche to say, but instant gratification that some people are seeking out there, whether that be a kid that doesn't make the team that he wants to, and then his next step is to, okay, we'll do some more training, and then expecting results like in 6 months, when the work that we're putting in now is, like you said, I'll let you know in 3 to 4 years if this actually works.
1,000%. I think a lot of systems we try and programs we try, the sample size is, 3 to 5 years down the road. That being said, it's pretty easy to see if something's not working in the now. But when you look at the Rogers hockey development model or what we're trying to build here at the base and the Lakers, I think there's different challenges, there's different obstacles, but at the end of the day, over the last 2,000 years, hard work and discipline and dedication usually adds up to success.
Awesome. So what is this kind of, I don't know if you have a specific on this, but what is the biggest issue that you see in the community right now when people are trying to develop players?
Yeah, I think understanding that every player is a different sample size. No two players are the same. No two brains are the same. No two styles are the same. I also think that, as you get older, you have to start identifying your body type, your athletic type. If you're trying to be a 200-foot defenseman and speed's not your forte, you have to start identifying that you are going to have a role as a hockey player at the next level or at the current level you're playing at. I just think that it's not cookie cutter. It's hard. I think a lot of times we think just because we sign up for a program or play for a certain school or play for a certain coach or do all the things you think it's going to take, the guys that go above and beyond are built different. That's never going to change. And I think we could do a better job of articulating, what junior hockey actually is, right? Yeah. Like, you show up to the rink at 8:30 in the morning and you go home at 5 p.m. It's a job. I think everybody wants, squirt hockey to last forever. And, when you go to college, it's hard. When you go to junior hockey, it's hard, right? It's your job. It's preparing you for the real world. And, I think junior hockey takes a lot of big hits that it doesn't treat kids the right way or this and that. And they're young adults. It's a 9 to 5. And I think a lot of hockey players, they grow up training so hard in the summer. Their schedules are so booked that, they haven't really had a boss. They haven't really had a real full-time 40-hour-a-week job. And junior hockey is 40 hours a week. High school hockey is, 1 to 2 hours a day.
Yeah. And I think it's related, but a lot of times we're talking to parents or players or whatever, and the comment is made, well, I work so hard. Well, and, we always talk amongst ourselves, and it's like everyone does.
Yeah, I try to, specifically with my high school kids, like, working hard is the bare minimum. Your attitude and your effort is the bare minimum. If Oliver Moore is on July 3rd working with a skating coach and he's a first-round draft pick, a Minnesota Gopher commit, if he's willing to work that hard on his own, right? Like, I think the telltale sign is your shot, right? If you're not shooting $200-300 a day, someone else is. And that doesn't mean that, like, you should tell a kid you have to shoot $200-300 a day, because that's where burnout happens. I think those organic hours that you put in because you love it is where that passion and that drive comes from. And so if everything you have is you're told what to do, you're told when to do it, you're told how to do it, you're going to miss out on the organic love and the passion of the process. And I try to tell a lot of parents around that 12 to 15-year-old age, your kids are going to give you the answers to the test, like how much to sign them up for, of what they're doing on their own time, right? If they're trying to hang out with their friends more, they're telling you they want to hang out with their friends more. If they're, not shooting as much pucks as they used to, it's probably time for a break. If you have to start identifying where their passions are as they start to decide the journey they're on. Now, all of those things down the line are going to have outcomes, and you're welcome to mentor your family on your kid on the give and take. But I just think that the answers are usually there. They just might not be what you want to hear or see.
All right, I think that's really interesting. And so I kind of wanted to go a little bit of lightning round here on one thing you would change about each of the levels, like after mites, let's say. So squirts and 10U. What's one thing you would change about our development process in the area?
I think squirts should play a whole lot more pond hockey, a whole lot more coaching, or a whole lot less coaching. I think peewees, you
Or
should
just, sorry, I said it was lightning round, but like association, like competition nights would be an example of that for the squirts, like mixing teams together.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So squirts, I would do all the squirts in one. We do a 3-week fall clinic in Rogers. There's 40 kids on the ice. We don't have an Olympic sheet. We can get them all out there. We don't know what team they're going to make. It's the most fun 3 weeks I have in the entire year is the fall clinic with those 40 kids on the ice.
Yep. Okay. Pee-wee and 12U.
Yeah, physical play. I think a lot of times in squirts and peewees, the best kids go coast to coast all over the ice.
Yep.
Incorporating physical play without body checking. But if you're not making the 2-on-2s and the 3-on-3s in extremely small areas, you're setting them up for success that's probably not going to be translatable.
Okay. And finally, Bantam or 15U.
Yeah, I think Bantam and 15U, they have to get in the weight room way more than they do. I think playing 60 games on a Bantam AA team when they're already playing another 50 games in the off season, and the only way you're going to make it to the next level is learning the game and being able to physically develop. I think you're reinforcing bad habits at a young age, as opposed to that is the most important time in athletic development.
Right, and we see it all the time with our sophomores into our high school program. The bad habits are there most of the time, and it's a matter of how quickly they can snap out of it usually.
100%.
So to your point, if they are taking care of their bodies in a better way so that in the 5th game in Roseau, they can actually play the game the right way, they're going to be in a much better spot.
I think the physical demand is the game changer for a sophomore in high school. If you are physically ready to handle the grind, you're going to have a great sophomore season. If you're not, you're going to wear down, and it's going to be a tough year.
Anything you change about high school?
Yeah, it's a good question.
We only have a certain amount of time.
I mean, I kind of like the lack of games, if I can be honest. We're going to talk about the difference between development and winning.
Yep.
And I think in high school you actually have a chance at that because of the amount of practices. The one thing I would change is game time, like 20-minute periods. I know it's easy to say when you've got a premier program that you want to play longer games, but
yeah,
I mean the fact that we don't have to play our 3rd and 4th line and we'd probably some teams would play better, I think is a massive miss in our depth.
And it would help with preparing them for the next level.
100%.
Awesome. So we can move on to our second section here. You alluded to it a little bit earlier. I wanted to ask you about the balance of winning, trying to win games, and actually developing skill and developing hockey sense and everything that we're trying to develop in our kids. So everyone agrees, throughout youth hockey, even high school hockey, that development is our number one priority. We're preparing these kids for the next level. That's the majority of our job. I think that being said, some of us struggle with the balance of trying to win and teaching that competitive side to it. So how do you see that balance?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think there's the first step is there's no right or wrong answer. When I was working with Rogers Youth Hockey Association, my first couple of years, I said I'm going to come here from an aspect of hockey development. You guys are going to come at it from a hockey experience. And that takes me back to when I was coaching Bantam B1 hockey. Jim Coltes, his kid was on my team. He's the head coach of Maple Grove girls hockey. And I think the conceptually understanding that for some kids, their hockey career is squirts through Bantams. That 6 years is your hockey career of putting on a jersey, playing on a team, playing for a coach. And, I think we can't get away from the bare minimum of youth sports should be taught how to, play with others, play for a common goal. I don't want to call a head coach a boss, but taking direction, being coachable. I think all those things that require zero talent should be the bare minimum of what a youth sport experience should be. Now, on the flip side, as the varsity head coach of Rogers, hockey development is my number one priority because I want to win. So I don't know where that line is. Everyone has to judge that, but I don't think you play an athletic sport and not want to win. But again, the kids are going to give you the answers to the test. If your 15 kids don't want to win and you're coaching a Squirt B2 team, make it fun, right?
Yeah.
And then every level that changes. I think from a high school hockey standpoint, the goal is to win. It just is. For a lot of kids, that is their last time playing a competitive sport. And if winning is not one of the things that they're like, I'm talking to your captains, right? They're the ones that are going to pull that rope. And every team's different. Some teams are going to go into a game and the chances of them winning are probably a little different than other teams. So that long-term holistic approach, I think, always has to be your number one thing. But when you look at like the high school hockey model, let's just say it's a Thursday, Saturday week. Monday, strictly development.
Yeah.
Right? I think Tuesday, strictly development. Wednesday and Friday, maybe that's your time to incorporate some things that are going to help you win on Thursday and Saturday. So now it's kind of that balance of a 50-50. If Monday and Tuesday you're working on power play, that's to win. There ain't much development happening with half your team on the bench.
Yep.
I just think if you look at your overall landscape of as a coach, figure out what that percentage is of development and winning.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit underrated when we think about this, or I guess maybe some people don't think of it this way in terms of development, is like defining roles and things that players can do for you. So I'm just thinking of maybe you have a talented sophomore that earned his way onto your team this year, and super talented, super skilled. We always think of development as like skill development, but saying to that player this year, you need to play a third line defensive style that can kill penalties, even though this player projects to be one of your skill guys next year or the year after. That's development too, because he's developing how to adapt to a role that you're giving him.
100%. And the irony in that is you're actually going to learn how to respect that role too. I think so often our Minnesota kids that are the premier players absolutely have zero conceptual idea of what a third liner goes through, what it's like to play an 11-minute role. And then you see them go to the next level and they're trying to learn different roles. I mean, how many Minnesota kids are going on to the next level that have been anything but a first liner and a first PP guy that gets to work through their mistakes, gets to work through their errors, gets to work through the highs and lows. And a commitment to roles in the Minnesota hockey model is a drastic eye-opener for kids as they move up the ladder. And every kid that's different, right? Like if you're a first liner on the Bantam team and now the only spot open on the varsity team is third line right wing, he has zero experience in that role. And you actually see some, kids that have been below somebody that's always fought for that last spot actually have a better tryout because they're trying to do things that are maybe more successful in that role.
Yeah. I agree. So let's back up a little bit now to more focused on a little bit of youth hockey. So you're at rinks all the time. You see games going on. Talk about some of the things that you see youth coaches do when they're tipping the scales way too far in trying to win.
Yeah, it takes me back to when I'm coaching Band B1 hockey. We're 0-10.
Yep.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I was working for the Minnesota Wild at the same time, and we couldn't break the puck out. We're bad at breaking out. I know, Ben, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, but I remember Mike Yo said if you can't break the puck out, teach them to pass.
Yeah.
That's it. All breakouts are is it's 1st and 10. You're on your own 5-yard line. So, yes, throwing an interception might be a pick six, but you have to make, 3-foot screen passes. You have to make, 3-yard runs. Making an understanding that you're still playing offense mentally when you have the puck is how you break the puck out. And I see so many teams ruin their holidays because they do hour-long breakout practices, hour-long face-off practices. Like, all the face-offs are 50-50 battles. So you can work on those things mentally without saying, hey, boys, we're not very good at this. And I would say my biggest problems are in the youth hockey development model is if you have more than 6 kids in a drill, it's probably a really bad drill. You cannot teach 10 kids what to do at the same time. 6 is a pretty good number at a youth hockey model of making sure that you can teach habits.
Yeah, and that goes back to, even at the highest levels, I listened to a talk that was given by the Chicago Steel head coach a few years ago, and their development at practice helps them win. That was their whole mindset. And so that goes if you're trying to, if a Pee Wee coach is struggling to break out, and they work on the skills associated with breaking out, it will help them actually win hockey games.
I'm a pretty competitive individual. I like winning.
Yeah.
And the development will help you win. That's why I said that the development of those habits are going to help you win. The only thing that should be argued is the power play, because you're working on only 5 kids. But I think if you're working on power play a lot in youth hockey, the odds of playing varsity hockey are pretty small. The odds of being on a varsity power play are next to 0. That's going to be a very select few. And a sophomore that makes the power play is probably on the power play for 3 years. And that's why it's so hard to think that, I want to be on the power play in Pee Wees or Bantams. Yeah, we all do. I get that. But that's where I think the hardest decisions in development and winning are, but not in the development of what's actually going to help you win in a game.
Yeah. So let's go the other way on it. There's coaches out there that maybe do things that don't try to win at all. What are some of those things? And I can think of a couple off the top of my head, but it's more of that setting kids up to fail.
100%.
You're up by a goal with 30 seconds left, and it's youth hockey, so we're just going to roll lines.
Yeah.
Even though
we
all know what's going to happen maybe in a certain scenario.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about...
I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I know we're going to get to it, but I'm learning that with my own kid, on a parent's perspective, on a child's perspective, how to work through those times where the coach doesn't call your name. But again, if you're not the coach gets to decide how he handles that. That is your culture of that team. Those are the decisions that he's been put in power to make. Someone believed in him to make those decisions, and then you have to live with it or don't play. And you look at a Pee Wee AA game or a BAM AA game or a Pee Wee B2 game. There's no right or wrong answer. I think surveying your families of what you signed up for, if I'm a youth coach, I think is incredibly important. I think understanding what your role is, which, youth hockey associations should probably mentor what their culture is on how do we handle these situations, because it's that I don't have the right answer of do you play to win with 30 seconds left or do you not. And that even goes for like the Minnesota Lakers. That goes for high school. Who gets to play? That is a really tough decision.
Yeah, and there's a million different factors on it, right? Is it a tournament game? Is it what month of the year is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But then it's like setting them up for failure of if you don't do it in December and then you start doing it in February, which one hurts more?
yeah.
Right?
And you're
like,
really setting them
yeah,
up.
that's to me, you as a leader, you as a culture, you as an organization, you have to decide where the finish line is. If you're racing to the finish line of a squared A game week 1, you're racing to the wrong finish line. That one's pretty obvious.
Yep.
But then deciding if Bantams or high school or developing kids for the next level is the finish line, that's where it gets a little gray.
Right. And some people out there think that the District 3 championship at PWB2 is the finish line. But
And
I don't necessarily agree with that.
That's where it gets gray, right? So for a PWB2 kid, their finish line probably is Bantams if you don't have a junior gold program. Or for some youth associations, the finish line is junior gold, but what if your kids go put on a different jersey? This is the last time he gets to put on, his community colors. I think it's so gray that you have to lean on good adult leaders, remembering that they're working with kids.
Yes.
It's not an adult game. It's not your work environment 9 to 5. It's a kid's game, and what are the pros and cons? Because every decision you're going to make is a T in the road.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to every decision you make. Leaders have to make tough decisions. I think at Rogers what we try to do is what's best for the overall program. That comes first. What's best for the team, that comes second. And if you have that hierarchy of a decision making, then make your tough decisions and own them.
Yeah. We could have a whole episode on that section.
100%.
But let's move on. I know you have you got a lot to do today. So last section, you have a young son. I don't know, how old is he now?
8.
8. Okay, so he's getting up there. So you've been coaching hockey for longer than he's been alive.
Correct.
Talk about being a full-time coach and how that perspective shapes being a dad with a kid in hockey.
It is the biggest eye-opening experience that I've gone through. And again, hockey is not our top priority. That can get skewed at times with the stresses of the job and the lifestyle that a hockey coach goes through. I try my hardest not to coach my own kid. Let's just hypothetically say I was the greatest youth hockey coach in the history of sport.
Yep.
I still would not want to coach my kid because the odds of him going to the NHL are as close to 0% as it comes. So what is his hockey experience supposed to be about? Playing with others, being coachable, the 10 things that require zero talent. Like, I would rather learn those things playing with my buddies than if I have to tell him to treat his family with respect, if I have to tell him to get up for school in the morning, if I have to tell him to eat healthy, if I have to tell him those things, now I'm going to start yelling at him to back check and play defense and play below the dots and, be hard to play against. And no, like when we get in the car on the ride home, I'm going to ask him if he tried his hardest. And that's maybe I care a little bit more about hockey because I love it. I'm probably not asking him if he tried his hardest in art class that day, but anytime I'm mad about his hockey performance, I challenge myself to ask how often have I asked him how music class is going. And I think a lot of coaches struggle with if your kid is a B kid or an A kid or a C kid, does that dictate how you are as a hockey coach? No. if my kid doesn't love hockey, that's his choice, right? How many parents take their child to work every day? The hockey rink is my job. I think that was a really hard part of my relationship with my son, is him learning that hockey's a fun game for a kid. And when he sees dad stressed out and always going to the rink and forgetting the family time because of hockey, he had to write his own story when it comes to hockey. And I just think a lot of coaches with kids in the program struggle with that, in the balance of, I want my kid to develop, but he's also my kid. It's a hard balance.
I think it's so interesting hearing you say that, and I think it can be instructive for not full-time coaches with their own kids. So, because a lot of times people will look at you and expect you to behave in a certain way if you're coaching your son's mite team. Is he mites? I don't know.
Mite, yep.
So they expect you to act a certain way and be super coach out there. Me and Pat O'Leary joke all the time about super coaching. So talk a little bit about maybe some advice. Well, talk a little bit about that experience of showing up to the rink and having people expect you to be super coach out there with your kid.
Yeah, again, every kid's different, right? The irony is mites needs volunteers. So they need people that know what they're doing. I think, like in Champlin, for instance, my kid wanted his dad at his games, not a hockey coach. So when they see me and, they're wondering, why is he not coaching this team or that team? For my relationship with my son, he wanted his dad at the games, not a hockey coach at the games. Now, as he's getting a little older, he's actually asking me to coach him a little more and learning that balance of it. But if you're going to coach your kid every single year from 5 years old to 14 years old, how good is he at actually taking coaching?
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard. Even when I'm in the stands, you're like, oh, don't pass that puck. Hold on to it a little longer. And I think you can say you're able to keep things in perspective, but as a dad, you have different colored glasses on when you're watching your own kid, no matter who you are. And setting your kid up for success in every way in their life is not setting them up for success. It's just not.
Yeah.
Putting them in adverse situations where they have to earn it like every other kid is a game changer for what they're going to do the rest of their life.
Right. And you mentioned that your son has indicated that he'd like a little bit more coaching. How do you recognize that as
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Apparently they worked on shooting last Saturday morning, and he said he needs a new stick because his is too short. So he wanted me to go buy him a new $200 stick, and I said, bend your knees more. So then we argued about why his shot maybe isn't as good as his teammates. And, my son likes to play a lot of knee hockey, doesn't like to shoot pucks in the garage. So I think having those conversations at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old is super important. Like, if they want to shoot better, teach them how to shoot better. But then they got to do it. That's on them, right? I'm not going to put in his schedule that he has to shoot pucks. It's a choice. Now, the irony is you want to do things you're good at, right? There's a million ways to get better at hockey. Playing other sports is probably the number one way. And I try to tell him that, games are fun. Practices need to be just as fun. So I'm gonna play with him at the park, right? Like, if your kid wants to go to the park more, take him to the park. If you want to play catch in the backyard, play catch in the backyard. I don't think it's as simple as, putting cones on the ice and telling him to skate around 100 cones. Let's just go play. Yeah. I'll play one-on-one with him.
So I have two more questions for you, and we can wrap this up. You mentioned multi-sport athletes, and this is kind of an aside, but I did get actually something on Instagram from somebody that wanted us to talk about it. Everyone says that they want multi-sport athletes on their team. I think the pushback, or maybe the skepticism that some people have when you say that, is when people miss whatever event it is, there's a little bit of frustration there. So talk about that.
Yep. I think it's the hardest question to answer. My point is Edina's quarterback is Mason West. He's a Fargo Forest draft pick. He's a multi-sport athlete. He gets to choose when he decides what to put his eggs in what basket. My thing on multi-sport athletes is say, don't tell me you're quitting baseball for hockey or golf for hockey or football for hockey, and then you don't put in those hours into hockey, football, and baseball.
Yeah.
Don't quit all these sports because they're hard, because practice is long. Lacrosse is long. Football is long hours, long practices for what, 8 games, and you're a role player, right? I think sometimes why they quit to focus on another sport, those are the questions you got to hit them with. Because for me, I want multi-sport athletes because I know that coach is hard on you. I know you have to buy into a role. I think learning plays and ideas and strategies and looking at the scoreboard and handling the fans in the crowd, that's what we're missing with our one sport athletes is not that they're athletic freaks and they want to work on their hands and shot. It's how do I work through those adverse moments of being up in a game, being down in a game, the pressures of having 1 minute left in the game, having a coach draw up a different play because a player got hurt in the middle of the game. Those are the things in the last 10 years that I see our non-multi-sport athletes don't know how to handle.
Yep. Awesome. But I think, so if you look at like let's say you have a kid on your Lakers team, I think the biggest piece about all of this is the communication from you and from them.
Yep.
Like, I'm just thinking of, let's say we have a football player at the high school program.
Yes.
The communication job for us as coaches is when that player comes in, we need to explain to them that they're not going to be as good right away.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We still love you.
Yeah.
We still think you're good at hockey.
And you're going to be good.
And so sometimes that's missed. And then the flip side is somebody signs up for your Lakers team and they don't tell you about their commitments elsewhere.
And that's where burnout happens,
Yeah.
right? If you have a 4-hour soccer game and you're still coming to hockey and you don't want to come, don't come. Like at Lakers, we do not want burnout, but like that's on you. Like we don't know what you're doing every hour of every day.
And some people are worried that you'll be upset.
100%. That's what I love about the Lakers is there's a lot of AAA programs that are cutthroat. We're not. We are playing the long-term approach, and I think that's why we have more success at the older ages than the younger ages because we're not working on breakouts and face-off plays in squirts.
Okay, getting back to your son, and then we can wrap it up. I'm curious on, so you started coaching 10 years ago. You start to develop an attitude or whatever you want to say towards parents.
Yeah.
Now that you are one, has it changed?
Yes.
In what way?
100%. You love your kid.
Yeah.
Like you just do. And that doesn't mean that like my kid needs to be on the first line. I think my son lacks in the D zone. I think he lacks at the net front coverage. So if the coach tells him to sit on the bench until he plays defense, sounds good. That's your coach.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to change that from a coach's perspective. But I've also learned that the 40 parents in the Rogers High School program don't have a high school coaching background of 10 years to understand what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I think building relationships and having good communication is critical in today's world. It just is. Whether you like it or not, adapt or die. I think communicating your standard and expectations is critical. I think communicating your culture is critical because that's what they're signing up for. And that's not going to change, but I understand why they love their kid. So being able to reframe their mind of, okay, take a deep breath. We have 40 people here. Like, we love your kid the same as all 40.
Yeah.
So what's best for your kid might not be what's best for our team. And that message has to be clear and definitive, but then also understanding that they want to help their kid. And so do we. So it's a team game. Using them as a resource, using us as a resource to help these kids is massive. But then again, like, don't make excuses for your kid. They're where they're at and that's where they're at. So start finding solutions, not point the finger.
Awesome. Well, I think I can let you go. I really appreciate this. Awesome convo. We should do it again
Love it.
on a different topic.
Love it. Once you run out of A-listers, you can come back to the B-listers again.
This is the 4th podcast, so I don't know what kind of list we're on. I should start with the A-list.
Hey, you're working your way up. You're working out the kinks with the D-listers like me.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Unreal.
Yep.
Thanks, brother.